Welcome back to Yang Daily. Got a fair amount to cover today, lots of global UBI love. Let's hit it. First off, the time has come to pay our respects to the Humanity Forward Fund, which is moving forward itself and dissolving the organization to be absorbed by Yang's Humanity Forward nonprofit. The fund was instrumental to so many of the grassroots efforts of the campaign, supporting Yang Gang on the ground and getting the message out. They deserve a healthy portion of the credit for how fast and how far the Yang Gang grew and the influence we gained. Yang Gang will never forget your efforts, and we salute you. I hope that Humanity Forward has wisely absorbed the talent and passionate personnel in addition to the funds. Speaking of Humanity Forward, New York congressional candidate Chivona Newsome has signed the Humanity Forward pledge to support a $2,000 UBI for the duration of the crisis and $1,000 permanent UBI. Ms. Newsome appears to be a new entrant to the race and is still setting up her website, so I can't be specific on any of her policy, but she appears to support some form of Green New Deal and universal health care. You can find her Twitter and website below if you're interested in the Humanity Forward pledge. That link is also below. Germany has begun a UBI petition that anyone from anywhere can sign. It only takes a few minutes, and the only required information is an email address and clicking a link in the verification email. They also ask for an address and name, but you can fake those if you'd like. A few minutes is the least we can do to support UBI across the pond. Let's get that petition filled with more signatures than there are people in Germany. Also, don't forget to have Google Chrome translate the page to English, or you're going to have a rough time. Right-click the page to bring up the option. If you're on mobile or other browser, hopefully you know how to do it, because I do not. Google is your friend. The UK, on the other hand, has launched UBI Lab Birmingham on Twitter. They will be fighting to start a UBI trial in their city, and they could use our support. Please follow the link below and follow them on Twitter. And while we're on social media, fellow Yang Ganger Newtone has started a Twitter thread where you can share links to your Facebook posts so that other Yang Gang can like your posts. While we do well on Twitter, it is vital that we improve our presence elsewhere. Facebook has many times more users than Twitter, and we need to reach those people to activate them to join the movement for UBI and other policies. This is a good way to start. Please post to Facebook about UBI and share the link in the thread below so we can support you supporting the movement. UBI has picked up some big new proponents. The UN Assistant Secretary General and the Chief Economist of the UN's Development Program have co-authored a letter on a vital step nations need to take going forward, a universal basic income. Quote, "It is time to add a new element to the policy packages that governments are introducing, one we know but have abandoned, universal basic income. The alternative, not strongly addressing COVID-19 repercussions, will result in a greater surge in inequality, increasing social tensions that would cost governments even more and open countries to heightened risk of societal conflict. The pandemic that began in China has raged across Asia and beyond, exposing inequalities and vulnerabilities of huge populations in the region. This includes informal workers, estimated at 1.3 billion people, or 2/3 of the Asia-Pacific workforce, as well as migrants with almost 100 million dislocated in India alone. If a large part of an entire population loses its livelihood, with no social safety net to catch it, the social costs could be unbearably high. Economic instability will follow the flare-up of the social tensions. During these times, when we need to kickstart sputtering economies, the payoff of social stability would be tremendous, making an even more powerful argument for UBI. So a new social contract needs to emerge from this crisis that rebalances deep inequalities that are prevalent across societies. To put it bluntly, the question should no longer be whether resources for effective social protection can be found, but how they can be found. UBI promises to be a useful element of such a framework. To make UBI fly, we will need fair taxation. With good conscience, we can no longer privatize profit and socialize loss. Then stop the subsidies, notably fossil fuel subsidies, which hinder the path to achieving the sustainable developmental goals, especially climate change targets. This would benefit us all while generating financial resources not just for UBI, but also to support affected fossil fuel companies. Multinationals, too, are not paying their fair share. Apple, Amazon, Google, and Walmart, to name just a few, generate mind-boggling profits and pay limited amounts in taxes after taking advantage of all the wrinkles in tax systems. If the top 1,000 corporations in the world were fairly taxed, it would allow for a modest UBI to be tightly and reasonably dispensed in countries around the world. Moving to such a system would need to ensure that the incentives to have a job remain intact. That is relatively simple to do. A UBI should be sufficient to sustain a person at a modest minimum, leaving sufficient incentives to work, save, and invest. The alternative to not having UBI is the rising likelihood of social unrest, conflict, unmanageable mass migration, and the proliferation of extremist groups that capitalize and ferment on social disappointment. It is against this background that we seriously need to consider implementing a well-designed UBI so shocks may hit, but not destroy. End quote. So there you have it. Even the UN now proposes a UBI similar to Yang's in both substance and argument. I'm calling it. The United Nations is Yang Gang. That sounds grammatically incorrect, but it's not, I promise. The article also includes a poll where 11,000 people across 28 EU nations polled at 68% approval for UBI, which is awesome. Frankly, nothing demonstrates the need for UBI more clearly, in my opinion, than the Trump-infused protests going on across the country right now against the lockdown. Step back and look at what is going on here. We have people who are so dependent on wages for survival that they are risking the health of themselves and others to protest in the streets, cramming together and shouting, showering each other in spittle, all in an attempt to return to wage slavery, again at the cost of their health and others. This is how low our economic system has driven people, making them so desperate as to beg to return to slave labor. This is a dystopian society, and we didn't even have to go through the apocalypse to get there. We've been voluntarily living this way for centuries. Enough is enough. It's time to free our people for real. Scott took part in a 2-hour roundtable discussion of UBI from the perspective of a resource-based economy. If you're unfamiliar, that is an economy where money does not exist and resources are considered the collective property of everyone. Pretty radical stuff and very interesting to think about. Though UBI isn't designed to do that, they talk about how UBI could be a stepping stone to such an economy and how it would work within such an economy. If you're interested, links below. Louisiana has opened the Music Relief Fund to assist Louisiana residents of 1 year or greater residency who are professional music industry workers whose income relied primarily on music events and have lost significant business as a result of COVID. The fund will provide income support to those eligible. If that's you, apply at the link below. If it's not you, but you know that person, let them know. Back to global, 170 Dutch academics put together an interesting economic proposal as to how to proceed in the wake of the pandemic. It's apparently gone viral in Dutch media, and it also contains some notable elements of Yang. They suggest the following. 1. Shift from an economy focused on aggregate GDP growth to one differentiating among sectors that can grow and need investment, such as critical public sectors, clean energy, education, and health, and sectors that need to radically degrow, such as oil, gas, mining, and advertising. 2. Build an economic framework focused on redistribution, which establishes a universal basic income, a universal social policy system, a strong progressive taxation of income, profits, and wealth, reduced working hours and job sharing, and recognized care work. 3. Transform farming toward regenerative agriculture based on biodiversity conservation, sustainable and mostly local and vegetarian food production, as well as fair agricultural employment and conditions and wages. 4. Reduce consumption and travel, with a drastic shift from luxury and wasteful consumption and travel to basic, necessary, sustainable, and satisfying consumption and travel. 5. Debt cancellation, especially for workers and small business owners, and for countries in the global south. Again, pretty radical stuff. The main reason I wanted to share this was to show just how ambitious and widespread changes coming out of this crisis can be. It's shaken up complacency and gotten people across the globe to start thinking about what we could be doing differently and what we need to be doing differently. This is a time of change, of opportunity. Great moves are possible, not the least of which could be UBI, universal health insurance, and healthcare reform, data rights, the American scorecard, and so on. All these things Yang was talking about and more are more clearly needed than ever, and people are seeing that now, and they are considering that now, and many are ready to fight for that now. But, and I cannot stress this enough, none of these things will happen on their own. We have an opportunity for change, not a guarantee. If we let the opportunity go by, things will settle back into old routines like this never happened. People have incredibly short memories, especially when subjected to the intellectual downer of wage slavery. We cannot allow that to happen. Right now is the time to commit your heart and soul to a political revolution. Now is the time to activate everyone you know to join the cause. Now is the time to organize into an unstoppable force and demand action by our representatives, lest we take action against them. Now is the time for change, and we will not be denied. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Drop by to thank Humanity Forward Fund for everything that they've done for us. Check out Chivona Newsome. Sign the German UBI petition to support the global movement. Follow UBI Lab Birmingham on Twitter. Post about UBI on Facebook and share to the Twitter thread. Apply for the Music Relief Fund if applicable. Flood all of Congress and the White House with calls, tweets, and letters, but particularly 5 calls a day, using ResistBot or Income Movement for easy contact. Help us reach out to other social justice groups to unite behind UBI. Print and hand out your neighborhood outreach cards. Get your taxes filed or visit the IRS portal so you can get your $1,200. Consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread if you need help. Consider what we can do to push the movement forward in this critical moment and discuss with others at the local hubs and the support links. And don't forget to Yang Daily.